Would you like to learn how to make mushrooms Polonaise, a delightful, creamy, rich side dish to go with your meat at your next great dinner? Stay tuned for our next episode of Hilltop Stovetop. Hello and welcome back to Hilltop Stovetop, the show where we're teaching you how to make great meals in an ordinary kitchen. Today's recipe is mushrooms Polonaise. And this is a recipe that I have made many times. It's really great with maybe a little fancier dinner. It's rich and creamy and nice side dish to go with particularly heavier meats, steak, roast beef, even turkey or chicken if it's well roasted, not something that is a lightweight kind of a meal. The other special thing about today is this is part of a series that I'm doing for the Ottawa Valley Midsummer Herbfest, where every year at Waba Cottage in White Lake, Ontario, they have the Herbfest. And this year's featured herb is parsley. So we're going to be doing a whole bunch of recipes that feature parsley. Of course, because of COVID, everything is going to be done virtually. But that's where having these videos comes into play. So there'll be links in their website to some of my videos, and I'll put a link down below to their website so you can see the other wonderful things that are happening there with the Herbfest. So this is not a difficult recipe to do, and it is something that you can kind of do a fair bit of it ahead of time and then just pop it in the oven to warm up and brown just before your meal. So we're going to start off with a pan on our lovely little cooker here. And we've got 1.5 pounds of sliced mushrooms. Now these are mushrooms that I actually had in the freezer. Remember back to our previous things where we were talking about if you got leftover mushrooms, throw them in the freezer. So this is a medley, kind of a medley of mushrooms. And it was actually, most of it was a mixture that was set up as the gourmet mixed mushrooms. So we've got 1.5 pounds of mushrooms, and we've got 1 large onion, which I've chopped up not too finely because we got big chunks of mushrooms, and so we're going to have chunks of onion as well. And we're putting all that in, and you'll notice that we were putting it in without any oil. And that is significant here. I'll just grab a spoon. Because the mushrooms are going to have a fair bit of moisture that comes off as they cook. So we're just going to mix those two things together. And then I'm going to put a lid on this. And we're kind of cooking this at a medium-ish heat. We're going to cook them for 15, maybe 20 minutes with the lid on, letting them steam in their own juices. And when the juices have dissipated and it's almost to the point where it's going to start sticking to the pan, then we're going to take it off. So we will see you in about 15 or 20 minutes. Okay, so I don't know if we're going to get much on the way of the overhead shots here because this is so steaming here now. But we have cooked this for about 20 minutes. And it says in the instructions until it's almost ready to stick to the bottom of the pot. So even though we still have juices in there, you can tell when you stir it that it is just a titch on the sticky side. So now we're ready for the next part. And that is where we're going to add in some butter. So this is 1/2 cup of butter. And we're going to melt that in. And once that's melted, then we're going to add 2 tablespoons of flour, because that will start to thicken it up a little bit. This is one thing that I have in my spice rack, is actually a container of flour like this, just for moments like this where you just need just a little bit, and I don't want to have to haul out my whole big flour bin. So we're going to put in 2 tablespoons of flour. And stir that up. And for those of you that are thinking, man, this is going to be an awful lot of mushrooms, and in the recipe it does say it's 6 servings. I think it's very, very generous. It's probably closer to about 10 servings. And I'm turning down the temperature on this, by the way. But whatever you've got as leftovers, take that and add in some broth. So if you've got 2 cups of leftovers, add 2 cups of broth, and you're going to end up with the best mushroom soup you've ever had. So now we're adding in a cup of whipping cream. I told you this was rich. And a cup of sour cream. Stir that up, and we're going to let it simmer for just a few more minutes until it starts to thicken up a bit, and then we'll add in the final spices. So give this about 5 minutes and we'll be right back again. Okay, so we're back, and this is thickening up nicely. So I'm going to turn the temperature down even more. And then we're going to add in the spices. Now we're going to start with our featured herb, the parsley, between 1/4 and 1/2 cup, depending on your taste. We didn't put this in earlier for 2 reasons. One, we don't want it to get mushy, and we do want to have the beautiful green color in with this as well. So I'm going to start with that, nicely chopped up parsley. And then we're going to add our spices. The main one being nutmeg. Now I've got whole nutmeg here. You can buy nutmeg already pre-ground, but I prefer it to do it this way, where you've got a little grater and you've got your little nugget of nutmeg and you're grating it. The reason I like this is it's much fresher flavor to it. So we've got about 1/2 teaspoon of nutmeg here. And then we're also going to add in about 1 teaspoon of salt. And about 1/2 teaspoon of pepper. Now the nutmeg in this is phenomenal. A nutmeg works really well with a lot of vegetables, mushrooms, turnips, carrots, anything that has a kind of an earthy flavor to it. That's where you're going to want to go with your with nutmeg in your vegetables. You'll be amazed at that. Okay, so there's our first stage. Now we've got a pan here. That's a well-greased pan. And I'm just going to turn this off for a second here. And we're going to pour this into the pan. Like I said, if you've got leftovers of this, just add in some broth and to thin it again, and you'll end up with a wonderful, wonderful soup. I mean, it looks like a really nice soup even right now. Okay, so now step 2 is we're going to take a little frying pan here. And I'm going to melt another 1/4 cup of butter. Now, if you were looking for part of this that you could do ahead of time, you could have stopped it at the part just when the mushrooms were cooked, but before you put your cream and stuff in. Or you could stop it at this point, or you can put it all together and stop it before you put it in the oven. So we've got this 1/4 cup of butter, and we've also got, what have we got here? About 1/2 cup of breadcrumbs. I'm just going to pour that into the butter, and we're going to mix this up and get it partially brown, not all the way brown, because we're going to finish it off in the oven. And I've got the oven preheating to 350. And this is where it's kind of that balancing act when you're creating a whole meal, because if you had other things in your oven, you're going to want to maybe put this in the oven to finish browning while your meat is resting after you finish cooking it, or depending on what you're serving with this, that's going to determine when you pop it in the oven. Okay, so that's just starting to brown, so I'm going to turn that off and grab a little spoon here. And I'm just going to take this and start just carefully sprinkling it over the top of our mushroom concoction. Now, if you want, you can add more breadcrumbs, make this a thicker coating. The other thing that you can do is to mix even more parsley in with the breadcrumbs themselves, depending on the look that you're going for. Little overhead shot here. So now this is ready to go into the oven. I've got the oven going at 350. So we want to put this in until this is browned a little bit more than this. So 5-10 minutes, but do keep an eye on it, because when you've got something like this with breadcrumbs and butter, it can really turn to a burn pretty quickly once it's hit that brown spot. So I'm going to pop this in the oven, and we'll see you in a few minutes. Okay, so I think we're at about 20 minutes or so. And again, I've been watching it really quite closely. And I think I'm just going to turn that off, and we are good to go. It is beautiful and bubbly, as you will see in just a moment. And there we go. So we have mushrooms Polonaise. This would go very nicely with the stuffed pork chops that was our previous video. Tonight I'm going to be having this with some grilled chicken thighs and tabbouleh salad. Now, tabbouleh salad is another thing that is a great use for parsley, and there'll be a separate video about how to make that. And let's just dig in. You'll see that this is It's almost more like a sauce, and that's why I say it's very nice as a side dish for your vegetables. And if we let it cool a little bit, it would thicken up a bit more, but there we have it. Mushrooms Polonaise. Hope you enjoyed today's video, and if you do, that you'll be happy to like and subscribe and share with your friends. And I look forward to you having a chance to look at that Ottawa Valley Midsummer Herbfest site as well, where you'll pick up lots of tips about what to do with herbs. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye for now.